Please help me. I'm finished. Please don't leave me here.
There was a man named Magnus. He was a poor man. He worked under the sun, laying bricks, mixing cement and carrying blocks, toiling under the sun each day just to make little money. He had very little, barely enough to take care of himself, let alone someone else. But despite his hardships, Magnus had something priceless: love. His girlfriend, Lizzie, was the kind of woman who saw beyond appearances. She loved Magnus, not for the money he didn't have, but for the man he was, honest, hard-working, and full of strength. They were deeply in love, and together they made a promise, never to leave each other, no matter how hard life became. That promise became their strength in the storms of life. Though Magnus had nothing to offer to Lizzie, he would bring her a wildflower from the roadside, a laugh at the end of a long day, or a warm hand to hold when the nights felt cold. And Lizzie, in return, gave him unwavering support and love. She never asked for more than what he could give. For her, his love was enough. Together they endured, together they dreamed, and through all the struggles they held on to each other, because love in its purest form was what kept them going. One evening, as the golden sun dipped behind the rooftops and Magnus walking home from a long day's work, something unexpected happened. He saw a girl walking down the road, a girl he had never seen before. She was strikingly beautiful. Magnus stopped, captivated by her beauty. "Excuse me, fine girl," he said. "What is your name?" The girl turned and offered a polite smile. "Good evening. My name is Margaret." "Wow, Margaret, you are beautiful," he said, bold and honest as always. "Do you have a boyfriend?" She laughed softly. "No, I don't. I have not met a man who can take care of me." Magnus replied without thinking, "Can you be my girlfriend? I promise to take good care of you." There was a pause, brief, thoughtful, and then she nodded. "Okay, I will be your girlfriend." And just like that, something new began. From that day on, Magnus started seeing Margaret regularly. Though he earned very little from his mason work, he spent what he had on her, buying her small gifts, giving her money when he got paid, trying his best to be the man she hoped for. He would visit her after long days, bringing simple things, a sweet, a scarf, a flower, and she would smile and thank him, and for a while it felt like love. Gradually, Magnus began to change. The love he once had for Lizzie, the girl who had stood by him through everything, began to fade. He became distant, often unavailable, and the laughter they used to share grew quiet. Whenever Lizzie reached out, worried and confused, he would say, "I am just busy with work, Lizzie. You know how things are." And Lizzie, trusting and loyal, believed him. She always had. But what she did not know was that Magnus was not just busy with work. He had fallen in love with someone else. His time, his thoughts, and even the little money he earned from his mason jobs were now being spent on Margaret. He would buy Margaret the gifts he never gave Lizzie, take her out, offer her what little comfort he could afford. It was strange how he found himself trying so hard to impress someone who wanted to be taken care of, while he had once had someone who loved him with nothing in return but his heart. The cruel irony was this: Lizzie never asked him for anything. She had loved him at his lowest, when he had nothing but dreams and dust. But now Magnus was giving to someone who had never known his struggle, while forgetting the woman who had endured it with him. And Lizzie, still waiting, still believing, held on to the promise they made, the one Magnus had already started to break. One afternoon, as Magnus and Margaret were spending time together at his house, Margaret leaned against him, with a serious expression on her face. She looked him in the eye and said softly, "Honey, I am pregnant." Magnus froze for a moment, then his face lit up with a mixture of surprise and joy. "Oh, my love, this is good news," he exclaimed, pulling her into an embrace. His heart beat faster, not just from the news, but from what it meant. A future, a family, a new beginning. From that moment on, Magnus threw himself into preparations. He began saving every little coin he could, cutting back even more on his own needs, on preparation to marry Margaret and support the child she was carrying. His mind was full of plans, how to gather enough money for a small wedding, how to be the man Margaret and the baby needed. And while all this was happening, Lizzie waited. She still believed in him. She still thought his distance was because of work, because he was out there chasing a better life for them both. Whenever she complained gently, asking why he hadn't come to see her or spent time with her, he would sigh and say, "You know how hard I am working, Lizzie. It's all for us." And she would smile even if it hurt and say, "I understand." But the truth was far from what she believed. While Lizzie still held tightly to the promise they had made, Magnus had already broken it. He had moved on, building a new life with someone else, while the woman, who had once believed in him more than anyone, remained in the dark, unaware, hopeful, and still waiting. It had been more than a week since Lizzie had seen Magnus. The silence was beginning to eat at her. His excuses had grown thin, and a quiet ache had settled in her chest. That morning, unable to bear it any longer, she decided to go see him. She arrived at his house just after sunrise, hoping to surprise him with breakfast, and maybe finally get a moment to talk, face to face. But as she walked closer to the front of the small house, what she saw stopped her in her tracks. Lizzie saw Magnus kissing another woman. Her heart froze. The tray in her hands slipped and hit the ground with a soft clatter. She stepped back, her voice shaking. "What is going on here, Magnus? What are you doing?" Magnus turned to her, visibly annoyed, and replied coldly, "What does it look like I am doing?" Lizzie's eyes filled with disbelief. "You are kissing another woman?" she asked, her voice a mixture of confusion and pain. "Yes," Magnus said without hesitation. "I am kissing my wife-to-be. For your information, she is pregnant with my child, and we are getting married soon." The words hit Lizzie like a blow to the chest. Everything she had believed, the promise, the love, the waiting, it all crumbled in an instant. The silence, the distance, the lies, it all made sense now. She stood there, stunned, as tears welled in her eyes. So this was the truth. Magnus had not been busy with work. He had simply moved on and left her behind. Lizzie couldn't hold back the flood of emotion. Without another word, she turned and ran away, her vision blurred by tears. She did not know where her feet were carrying her. She just needed to get away. When she reached the side of the road, she collapsed to the ground and broke down completely. Her heart shattered, her chest heavy with pain. The man she had loved, supported, and waited for had betrayed her in the cruelest way. Meanwhile, Magnus carried on with his life, unbothered by the damage he had left behind. He and Margaret went ahead with their wedding plan, a modest ceremony, rushed and quiet. Soon after, Margaret gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. They named them Felix and Felicity. For a moment, it seemed like everything was falling into place for Magnus, but that moment was short-lived. Reality came crashing down quickly. The small jobs he used to take, laying bricks, mixing cement, lifting heavy loads, were barely enough to keep food on the table for himself, let alone a wife and two newborn babies. Diapers, baby food, hospital bills, everything piled up faster than the money came in. Margaret, once glowing and full of affection, began to change too. She grew restless and unhappy, often complaining that Magnus was not doing enough, that she had expected more from him. "I thought you said you would take care of me," she would say. Magnus, exhausted and defeated, did not have answers anymore. The love he once thought would bring him joy was now buried under the weight of responsibility and regret. And though he tried to hide it, deep down, he began to remember Lizzie, the one who had loved him with nothing, the one who never asked for more, the one he had thrown away. As the twins, Felix and Felicity, began to grow, new challenges rose like mountains before Magnus. There was no money to send them to school. Even feeding them daily had become a battle. With desperation creeping in, Margaret started selling bottled water on the streets, under the hot sun. Every day she would walk long distances, calling out to passers-by, hoping for enough sales to buy a little food. And when the day ended, she would return home with just enough to feed herself and the children. Magnus, tired and still doing his small jobs, often came home empty-handed. And when he did, Margaret made it clear, if he did not bring money, he would not eat. She would cook meals with whatever she earned, feed the twins, eat her portion, and leave nothing for him. Magnus endured it, swallowing his pride and his hunger, until one evening when his stomach twisted in pain, and temptation got the better of him. While Margaret was outside washing, he quietly served himself a small portion of the food she had cooked and ate quickly, hoping she wouldn't notice. But she did. Moments later, she stormed into the room with the pot in her hands. Before he could even explain, she flung the remaining food at him, the hot food splashing across his body. "Why did you eat my food, you lazy man?" she shouted. "That food was for me and my children." "I was hungry," Magnus replied weakly, eyes lowered. "I have not eaten all day." "I don't care," she snapped. "Don't you ever touch my food again unless you bring money. Or I swear one day both of us will appear in the newspapers, and not for a good reason." Magnus stood there, humiliated and broken. The woman he once believed would bring him joy had now become a mirror of everything he never imagined. Cold, angry, and full of resentment. And in that moment he remembered Lizzie, how she would have divided a single loaf of bread between them without complaint. Regret settled in his chest like a stone. He had traded love for illusion, and now he was left with nothing but consequences. One evening, after another day of struggle and silence, Margaret called Magnus into the room. Her face was hard, her voice laced with bitterness. "Magnus, or whatever you call yourself," she snapped, "this is not the kind of life I wished for myself. You deceived me with cheap flowers and empty promises. I thought you could take care of me like you said, but no, you are useless and hopeless." Magnus felt something inside him snap. "Watch your tongue, Margaret," he said through clenched teeth. "I am still your husband," Margaret sneered, stepping closer. "And if I don't watch my tongue, what will you do, husband?" Magnus's voice dropped, cold and harsh. "You are forcing me to hit you, and if I hit you, you will not recognize yourself again." Margaret's eyes flared with rage. "Magnus, before you hit me, I will hit you first." Without warning, she reached behind the door and grabbed a wooden pestle. With the force of her anger, she swung it and struck Magnus on the head. He staggered back, clutching his skull as he fell to his knees. "Oh, my head, he cried, blood mixing with sweat, pain radiating through his skull. The room fell into a heavy silence. At that moment, the chaos that had built up between them erupted, completely. What was once a relationship born of charm and attraction had now turned into a battlefield of regret, resentment, and violence. Magnus sat on the floor, wounded and ashamed, not just from the blow to his head, but from the realization that he had created this life. The love he had chased had turned into a curse, and the woman he had once chosen over Lizzie now stood as his greatest mistake. The next morning the house was quiet, but the silence was heavy with something final. Margaret, with cold determination, packed her belongings. She dressed the twins and stood at the doorway with fire in her eyes. "Hopeless Magnus," she called out. Magnus, still nursing the swelling on his head, looked up from where he lay on the mat. "Margaret, I am leaving you and your miserable life. You will suffer and die in this house alone. I am taking my children with me. I regret the day I ever became your wife." Magnus dropped to his knees, his voice cracking with desperation. Please, please, my wife, don't go. I know I have failed, but I am trying. Don't take the children away from me. Please stay with me. But Margaret looked at him with nothing but disgust. Get out of my way, you madman, she spat, brushing past him without a second glance. As they walked down the dusty road, little Felix looked up at her with innocent eyes. Mummy, where are we going? Is Daddy going to join us later? Margaret did not waste time to answer him. Her voice was sharp. Forget about your father. He is a hopeless man. He do not deserve either of you. The children went quiet, confused and scared, holding tighter to her hands as they disappeared into the distance. Back at the house, Magnus sat still on the floor, staring at the door they had walked out of. The silence now was different, empty, heavy and real. He had lost everything. The woman he chased after, the children he barely got to know, the peace he once had with Lizzie, all gone. And for the first time he was truly alone. Magnus felt the full weight of his choices. One afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows on the dusty streets, Magnus wandered aimlessly, lost in thought. His clothes were worn, his face hollow, and his mind weighed down by regret. The once proud man now looked like a shadow of himself. As he crossed the road, absent-minded and unaware of his surroundings, a loud car horn blared repeatedly. But Magnus did not move. He didn't hear the sound. He was lost. The tires screeched as the car came to a sudden halt, just inches from him. The door swung open and a woman stepped out in alarm and frustration. "Hello, Mr. Man," she called out. "What is wrong with you? Didn't you hear the car honking?" Magnus looked up slowly and his eyes widened in disbelief. "Lizzie," he whispered, almost breathless. She froze. "Magnus," she said, stunned. There was a moment of silence as they stared at each other, two people who had once shared dreams, now facing each other after years of separation. "Oh my God, Magnus, what happened to you?" Lizzie asked, truly taken aback by his condition. His eyes were sunken, his skin pale, and he looked like life had beaten him down. Magnus lowered his head in shame and began to speak. He told her everything, how he had left her for Margaret, thinking he had found something better. He told her of the struggles, the betrayal, the violence, and finally, the day Margaret walked away with the children. Lizzie listened quietly, her heart heavy, not with pain anymore, but with a mixture of pity and gratitude. When he finished, she sighed and said gently, "Sorry for everything you went through, Magnus, but when you left me, God gave me something better." She turned back to the car and called, "Honey." A man stepped out of the car, neatly dressed, confident and kind-looking. He walked over and stood beside Lizzie, taking her hand with a smile. "Honey, this is my ex I told you about," she said softly. The man extended his hand to Magnus and said with a warm smile, "Oh, Mr. Magnus, thank you, truly. Because you left her, I had the chance to meet the most wonderful woman. She is everything a man could ever pray for." Magnus could not speak. His throat tightened as he watched Lizzie smile, not at him, but at someone else, someone who saw her worth, someone who did not throw her away. He forced a smile, nodded slowly. Just before Lizzie entered the car, she paused. Reaching into her handbag, she pulled out a small card and held it out to Magnus. "Here," she said softly. "This is my husband's card. Call him. I have something for you." Magnus looked at the card, then back at Lizzie, confused. "Something for me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lizzie did not say more. She simply gave a faint, mysterious smile. Then she got into the car, her husband behind the wheel. With a soft hum of the engine, they drove off, leaving behind a trail of dust, and a man frozen in place. Magnus stood in the road, clutching the car tightly. His mind was spinning. What could she possibly have for him? After everything he had done, after the pain, the betrayal, why would she still offer him anything? Was it pity? Was it forgiveness? He didn't know. and with shaking hands he looked down at the card. The next morning, with a mix of nervousness and curiosity, Magnus picked up his phone and dialed the number on the card. "Hello, who is this?" a deep voice answered. "Good morning, sir. It is me, Magnus. Your wife, Lizzie, told me to call you." There was a pause, then the man replied, "Oh, all right. Come to the address on the card. I am waiting for you." The call ended. Magnus stared at the phone in shock. He wants me to come? He quickly cleaned himself up, wore his best shirt, though it was old, and made his way to the address. It was a tall building in the heart of the city, neat, modern, and nothing like the life he had been used to. Magnus walked in hesitantly and asked the receptionist for Lizzie's husband. Moments later, he found himself inside a large, well-furnished office. A calm and confident man sat behind the desk. "Good afternoon, sir. You told me to come." "Here I am," Magnus said nervously, bowing slightly. "You are welcome. Please sit down," Lizzie's husband replied with a kind smile. Magnus sat, his hands resting on his knees, unsure of what to expect. The man leaned forward, folding his hands on the desk. "Mr. Magnus, my wife has told me everything, how you left her for another woman, and how life turned around afterward. First of all, I want to thank you." Magnus blinked, confused. "Thank me, sir?" he asked quietly. "Yes," the man said. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to make Lizzie my wife. She is everything I have ever wanted in a woman. Strong, loyal, kind-hearted. You let her go, and I got the greatest blessing of my life." Magnus dropped his gaze, guilt washing over him again. "But that is not all," the man continued. "Yesterday, after we met you, Lizzie came to me. Out of pity and compassion, she asked me to help you. So, because of the love I have for my wife, and the kind of heart she has, I have decided to offer you a job here in my company." Magnus looked up, stunned. "I am making you a manager," he said. "With a good office, a mouth-watering salary, a brand-new car, and a new house, your life deserves another chance. Maybe this will help you find yourself again." Magnus stood up, overwhelmed. His voice trembled with emotion. "Oh my God, thank you so much, sir. I do not deserve this kindness. God will bless you and your family forever." "It's all right," the man said with a warm smile. "Your work starts tomorrow. Go and prepare." Magnus walked out of the building with tears in his eyes, not of sadness but of gratitude. His heart was full, his steps lighter. For the first time in years, hope had returned. The next day, Magnus dressed up for work and arrived at his new workplace right on time. When he entered his office, he paused at the door, stunned once again by the beauty and comfort of the richly furnished space. A leather chair, polished desk, shelves stacked with files, and even a coffee machine in the corner. It was a world he never imagined he would belong to. And the company gave him a brand new car and a beautiful house as part of his managerial benefits. Weeks passed, then months. Magnus worked diligently, earning respect from staffs and appreciation from Lizzie's husband, his boss. His salary was more than enough to sustain him. For the first time in years, Magnus lived with dignity and peace. But through it all, he never forgot the turning point, the woman he once betrayed, who had still looked back with compassion instead of hatred. Lizzie. One afternoon, as he sat in his office, looking out through the wide glass window, he remembered her birthday was coming up. He rested his chin on his hand, thinking deeply. After everything I did, she still helped me. How do I even begin to thank her? A small smile crept onto his face. "I will buy her a brand new car," he said softly to himself, "not just as a gift, but as a token of gratitude." He just wanted to say, "Thank you." On the day of Lizzie's birthday, the celebration was held at a beautiful venue, with friends and colleagues present. Everyone smiled and danced, but Magnus had come with something more than just a smile. He walked up to Lizzie with a small box in his hand. Inside the box were the keys to a sleek, brand-new car parked outside. "Lizzie," he said gently, "this is not just a birthday gift, it is my gratitude for everything, for helping me when I did not deserve it, for being kind when I had been cruel. Thank you." He extended the keys to her. Lizzie looked at the keys for a moment, then slowly raised her eyes to his. "Magnus," she said, smiling warmly, "I am happy that you are doing well now. Truly, I am." She paused and took a deep breath. "But I cannot accept this car." Magnus blinked, surprised. "Why not?" he asked. "There is only one gift I want from you," she said, "and it is not something you can buy. I want you to go and bring your wife and children home. Reunite with your family." Magnus looked stunned. The keys trembled slightly in his hand. "Lizzie," he whispered, but she raised her hand gently. "If I could forgive you after everything you did to me, then I want you to forgive your wife. She may have hurt you, yes, but maybe she was reacting to the pain you caused her too. Give her another chance, just like you were given." Lizzie's eyes sparkled, not with pride, but with love and peace. "Gift her this car," she continued, "not because she deserves it, but because you deserve to live free of bitterness and regret." Magnus stood silently, still holding the keys. For a moment he did not know what to say. His heart beat heavily in his chest. And in that moment he realized something powerful. Forgiveness was not just a gift to others, it was also the beginning of his own healing. The next day, with a heart full of courage and a mind ready to forgive and rebuild, Magnus drove to the part of town where Margaret lived. As he arrived, he saw her outside, bent over a basin, hand-washing clothes. "Margaret," he called gently. She paused, turned slowly, and froze. There he stood, dressed in fine clothes, clean-cut and composed. Behind him was a shining, expensive-looking car. For a moment, she could not speak. "Magnus," she finally said, blinking in disbelief, "is this really you? You have changed." Magnus nodded slowly, a soft smile forming on his face. "Yes, my wife. Everything has changed. I came to ask for your forgiveness, for everything. Please come back with me. Let us rebuild our home. This time it will be different. I promise." Margaret stared at him, searching his face for any trace of pride or pretense, but she found none. Only honesty, humility, and the love that once lived between them. Without a word, she stepped forward and hugged him tightly. Then, with tears in her eyes, she called out, "Felix! Felicity, come out here." The children ran out, curious, then stopped when they saw the man standing with their mother. "Daddy," they both said at once. Magnus knelt down and opened his arms. "Yes, it is me." The twins rushed into his embrace, holding him tightly, as if afraid he would disappear again. With no more words needed, Margaret packed her things, and they all got into the car as they drove away. But when they arrived at their new home, spacious, beautiful, and peaceful, her mouth dropped open. Inside, Magnus sat them down and told them the full story. How Lizzie, the woman he once betrayed, became the one who showed him mercy. How her husband offered him a new life. How love and forgiveness had changed everything. Margaret listened in silence. For the first time, she understood what grace truly meant. She looked at her husband, then down at her children, and finally whispered, "Thank you, God, for second chances." Just a few days after Margaret and the children returned home, Magnus fulfilled another silent promise he had made to himself. He enrolled Felix and Felicity into one of the best schools in the city. The children's eyes sparkled with joy the moment they stepped into the school compound. The environment was beautiful and clean, filled with colorful classrooms, bright playgrounds, and friendly teachers. It was a world far different from what they had known, and it filled their hearts with excitement and hope. Every morning, Magnus drove them to school, in the same car he once thought of gifting Lizzie. And every evening he would listen eagerly to their stories about new friends, kind teachers, and fun lessons. At home, the atmosphere changed completely. Laughter returned. Margaret smiled again, no longer burdened by survival, but enjoying the peace of a united family. Magnus never took any of it for granted. He worked hard every day, not just at his job, but at being a better husband and father. And every once in a while he would still visit Lizzie and her husband, not just to say thank you, but to let them know how their kindness continued to bloom in his life. And so, from a life once marked by pain, regret, and betrayal, a new story was written, one of forgiveness, redemption, and second chances. They lived happily ever after. Thank you so much for watching this story, all the way to the end. Please share your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Your support keeps the stories coming. Much love.